Hi everyone, and welcome back to Coast Connections. Today we're heading into the woods with our favorite conservation officer. Stuart Bates from the Ministry of Environment is going to talk about bats, bears, and cougars. Oh my. Had to add that because that's what Stuart says. So welcome, Stuart. It's nice to have you back. We had you here about 3 years ago.
Yes.
So let's check in again. In the fall, the bears are on the move, cougars are on the move. Well, actually any time of the year.
Cougars are active year-round, yes.
I want to start off, though, Stuart, by talking about bats, because there's been a few encounters. There was a very tragic incident with a young man in Parksville who got rabies from a bat.
He did.
And there was a recent rabid bat found in the Saanich area near a school as well.
Yes.
So what should we do if we come across a bat or if we have bats living in our home?
Well, first off, conservation officers don't generally deal with bats.
Okay.
But we did do some research. If you come across a bat that is you believe sick or dead, don't touch it. It's not bats and scratches that can get you rabies. You can get it just from touching it. So whatever you do, don't touch it. Pick it up with a shovel or some plastic container and put it in a freezer if you can.
Yeah.
If you think or suspect you may have come in contact with a rabid bat, if you can collect the bat, great. Again, don't touch it. Take it with you and seek medical attention. If it happens with your one of your pets, you find a dead bat and your cat's nearby. Again, try to gather the bat if you can without touching it, and go to your vet and take the bat with you, and then they can worry about getting it tested.
Right.
So the big key here, we need to remind everybody, do not touch them with your bare hands.
Okay.
Gloves, plastic containers, an old margarine container if you can. If you can't go to medical attention or the vet right away, put the bat in the container in your freezer so it'll freeze. They start to deteriorate really quickly, and they want to get it tested properly.
There's over 1,300 species of bats in the world, and BC has the highest population of bats in Canada.
Yeah.
We have about 18 species, and I think about 8 of those are at risk. They are protected by the Wildlife Act.
Yes.
So we want to encourage bats to colonize, but we want to stay safe around them as well.
Yeah, bats are very good for the environment, especially as far as humans go, because all the bats that are here they only eat insects, right? We don't have the fruit bats and stuff like that. We just have the ones that eat insects, and they eat a lot of insects, right? Flying is very expensive as far as energy goes, so they have to eat a lot every night.
And they eat almost half their body weight in insects each night.
Like
they're
sometimes
nocturnal.
Mosquitoes.
Yeah, exactly, which we like.
Yes.
Or other pests in the forest or agriculture. So they're very important.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in my research too today, Stuart, I found out that a baby bat is called a pup. I did not know that. Yeah. And that bats actually hibernate.
They
do. I did not know that either.
Yes, they do. Yeah. They hibernate here in hibernaculums, I believe they're called. So lots of people are building bat houses and stuff to try to encourage bats to be in their neighborhood, which is good. Bats require everything everybody else does, right? They require shelter, food, and water.
Yes.
Because of the way they fly around and the surface area of their wings, they do get dehydrated quickly, so they do need a fresh source of water. But it has to be open and wide enough for them to fly and pick up the water. They don't sit down to drink.
Oh, fly through.
They just fly through and drink.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. So they wouldn't be drinking from a bird bath.
No.
Or something like that.
I guess they could if it was open enough, but they generally want to fly over.
Okay.
So and rabies, although terrifying for most people, is still very, very rare.
Very rare.
Very rare.
That was a very, very rare incident for that young fellow. Okay, Stuart, let's move on into the woods, into bear country.
Sure.
It's September.
It is.
They're everywhere. In fact, Vancouver Island has between almost 10,000 black bears?
Yeah, I mean, they're hard to estimate, but it does have a lot of black bears for the area that it covers. Yes.
One of the most dense population of bears in the world.
Correct.
Right here on the island.
Yes.
So it's amazing we don't actually see or encounter more of them.
Well, I see a lot.
Yeah, I guess you do. So how can we avoid attracting them or having a negative encounter with a bear?
So the biggest thing with bears is they have a one-track mind, especially when you get into August and September and they're getting ready to hibernate, which we'll go into later, that some bears on Vancouver Island don't. But they still get into that phase, and it's called hyperphagia, where basically their brain is hardwired to their stomach, and all they want to do is eat. And they're looking to eat up to 20,000 calories a day.
Yo.
So it doesn't matter how big or small your community is. On Vancouver Island, with the population of bears that we have, there will always be that interaction between people where the communities meet the forest, right? And in some of our communities now, we leave wildlife corridors through communities.
Yep.
Well, of course, the bears are more than happy to walk down them. So it's really incumbent and a lawful requirement for people to secure their attractants. And the number one attractant for bears is always garbage.
Garbage. We've got a great shot of the bears rippling
Yes.
through the garbage here that you provided.
Yeah, and a lot of communities now have those green compost bins.
Yes.
Well, again, all you've done by doing that is take out of your garbage what the bear actually wants. And those
Sorted it for 'em.
You've sorted it for
Yeah.
them. And those little green compost bins have a handle that's about nose level for a bear. And they will literally, I've watched them do it, grab it and walk off into the forest like a picnic basket.
They take the whole container with them,
They just
like a shopping cart.
Yeah, because the latch on there is to keep a raccoon out. It won't keep a bear out.
Okay.
Bears will just jump on them until they pop open.
Yeah.
So it's really incumbent upon people to secure those somewhere where a bear can access it. Garage, a shed. I don't want people to expect people to keep it in their inside their house.
No.
But a garage or shed is certainly a safe and proper way to secure the bear or the garbage from the bear. So
Now, there is a fine if you don't, is there?
fine is $230.
So you should be putting those bins out the morning of the collection.
The morning of pickup. Yes.
Yeah.
And conservation officers throughout BC do and will be doing what we call an attractant audit, where we go through communities that are known to have bears. And if we find garbage that's out the night before, you will get a fine.
I did not know that. $230.
$230.
Yeah. And that's to protect the bear.
Yeah, it is. It's designed to
Yeah.
protect the bear.
Yeah.
It will also protect the people because the bears won't have the opportunity to become habituated to people and people food.
Exactly.
Right,
So we need to play our part in that in
Correct.
terms of.
And it's not that
of work.
hard for us to put our
No.
garbage out the morning of.
Exactly. There's another great shot that you provided of a bear and a freezer. I couldn't believe this. He's actually peeling the top of the freezer back.
Bears are incredibly strong. I actually took that picture.
Yeah.
And this person had a small deep freeze outside their house, put a lock on it.
Yeah.
And the bear simply sat on the lid and folded it in half.
Seriously.
Yeah, he sat on top, grabbed a corner and pulled it up and then emptied the freezer for him.
And helped himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people need to understand that they are incredibly strong and
Yeah.
incredibly driven when it comes to food. We've had bears that have learned to open car doors.
I've
We've
seen
had bears
that.
that can fold a car door in half if they grab the window part.
That's incredible.
Now, I went to a call where a 50-pound bear cub actually broke a car window. If you think about how hard it is to break a car window, that takes some force.
Yeah.
So
And to have the dexterity to open the handle too. So
yeah,
I mean, lock your doors.
I've seen them do it with their paws and with their teeth. They just pop them open.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're incredibly smart and
Yeah.
incredibly strong.
Yeah.
So it's really incumbent on us to secure the attractants where they can't get to them.
Yeah. And apples and pears and fruit this time of year.
This is the time of year when bears love to find fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit on trees doesn't smell that bad, but once it starts hitting the ground, it'll start to rot, and the bears will smell it for miles. And bears will actually eat enough rotten fruit to get drunk.
Wow.
Right? They are literally looking for 20,000 calories a day,
Yeah.
so that's a lot of apples.
Yeah. And there's a shot of a bunch of apples just being dumped, like they're all being collected and then dumped by a
and we
fence.
get people that do
it's
that
like
where
a buffet.
they gather it all up because they don't
Yeah.
want these apples, and then they just toss them in a pile. And again, they've just gathered it up for the bear.
Yeah, exactly. Making it much easier and much more dangerous for the bears and
It is
for
because
us.
well, it's for the bears too, but it also then it creates that situation where now the bear may feel the need to protect that food source,
Okay.
and that's where the conflict's going to occur.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be it a person or a pet, like a dog.
Yeah. So I see a bear in my backyard, Stuart. What do I do?
The biggest and most important thing I need to tell people: call us right away. Right. The sooner the Conservation Officer Service finds out a bear in your yard or in your neighborhood, the more options we have.
Yeah.
We can go there. We can tell the people that have to secure the attractants that are causing the problem before the bear becomes food conditioned and habituated. Far too often you see it now in media comments or Facebook comments where people saying don't call the conservation officers. The quickest way to get a bear killed is to not call the conservation officers, because the bear's behavior will continue to escalate to the point where then we have no choice.
Yeah.
It's not what we want to do, but because people have allowed it to escalate to that point, we often have no option. We do not remove bears based on where they are. We don't create what we call predator-free zones like people seem to want. We remove bears based on their behavior.
Okay.
If the bear's behavior is showing aggressive, threatening, or predatory behavior towards people,
Yeah.
it'll have to be removed. In most cases, not all. We've had cases where bears have actually attacked people that we determined was a defensive attack, and we don't destroy the bear. We close the area to people for a time being.
A defensive attack, like protecting cubs
Right,
or
if it's protecting
something
cubs,
like that?
or even if it has a deer carcass there and you stumbled into it.
Right.
Right? We've
Yeah.
had cases where people ran into them with their mountain bikes, and the
Yeah.
bear swatted them and ran off. Well, again, the bear was just defending itself.
Exactly.
It wasn't a full-blown attack.
Yeah.
And we gauge that bear's behavior. I try to like to say it. On a scale of 1 to 7, 1 good bear, he's eating berries and he runs as soon as he sees people.
Yeah.
7, he's chewing on somebody. So we're not going to be tolerated.
No.
But we also gauge that behavior that the people report to us. What would happen if that bear ran into a 10-year-old? Because those 9 and 10-year-olds are about that age when kids are allowed to go walk to their friend's house or ride their bike down the trail to their soccer game, right? So what happens when that person or that child comes across a bear by themselves? They're not going to know not to run. They're not going to know not to scream.
Right.
They're probably going to do something wrong, and a horrible situation could occur. So we base our reaction, and our duty is to protect the public. So it is unfortunate, but that's unfortunately how it's going to end up.
So what do we do if we encounter a bear? We're out walking urban sidewalk, we're out walking in the woods.
Anytime you encounter a bear, the biggest thing you need to remember is don't run.
Yeah.
Right? Bear, and it works for cougars too. Right? They're predators. If you run from a predator, you could cause an attack that wasn't going to occur. So the biggest thing is don't run and don't scream. Humans screaming often, especially smaller people, ladies and children, have a high-pitched scream that sounds just like a wounded deer.
Wow.
Right? So
interesting.
don't run, don't scream. Make yourself look big.
Yeah.
Hold your arms above your head, backpack, open your coat, whatever.
Do you make eye contact with the bear?
With bears, no.
Okay.
With cougars, yes. That's the only difference between the two.
Okay.
The bear, you want to sort of look at his feet so you know where he's at, but making eye contact is a challenge. So you want to avoid that.
That's too
Just
aggressive.
Look towards him so you know where he's at. Make yourself. The biggest thing we need to tell people is you should be saying, "Hey bear, hey bear." It's not that the bear understands English, but it's going to alert everybody else within earshot that you have a problem and what it is. Because the worst thing you want now is to scream and have somebody come run to your help and
they
run
become
up behind the
target.
bear. Right?
Yeah,
So.
right. And as you're saying that, hey bear, making yourself bigger, are you backing away or are you standing still?
No, you want to back away to safety if you can.
Okay.
And I usually suggest to people, if you're in a forested area or anywhere for that matter, slide your feet, don't pick them up, because this would be a really bad time to trip.
Oh, that's a very good tip.
Right?
Yeah.
Just slide your feet backwards.
Yeah. And then you know what terrain you're...
Yeah, and all that advice works exactly the same for cougars, with the exception of you stare a cougar in the eyes. Cougars attack deer from behind. Right? So you really want to make sure that you're making eye contact, and they're not going to risk it. Cougars don't want to risk getting hurt when they attack an animal, so they generally almost always attack from behind.
So just laser vision onto that cougar?
Yeah. Lock on his eyes.
If you see one, do you want to keep your eyes on it even though it hasn't encountered you yet? Do you want to make sure you know where it is?
A bear?
Cougar.
A cougar? Yeah, you want to keep your eye on it.
Yeah.
And as with most wildlife, 99.999% of the time, they know you're there long before you see them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So whether they're looking at you or not, I assure you they know you're there.
Well, and the cougars, they call them the lords of the forest. I mean, they have such stealth and such silence as they're walking around.
I've never heard that term before, but yeah, they are very stealthy, very quiet.
Very.
Right.
And they often see you long before you see them, or you pass them.
They see or hear you long before.
No idea.
Yeah.
And again, as with bears, Vancouver Island has one of the densest populations in the world.
In the world.
So it's surprising again that there aren't more cougar encounters or cougar attacks.
Yeah.
So how often are you seeing encounters or attacks in your work, Stuart?
Attacks are very, very rare. I mean, Vancouver Island is reportedly one of the most highly, has one of the highest counts of attacks for the area, and it's less than 1 per year. It is extremely rare.
And is that an encounter or an attack?
No, actual attacks. It's less than 1 per year.
Yeah.
Lots of people run into cougars, and the cougar just leaves.
Yes, I mean, they're
Right.
very shy.
Yeah, they're very shy creatures.
And another thing that I heard is if some people say, well, grab a stick or a rock and use it as ammunition.
Yeah, anything to make yourself look big and anything to defend
As long as you
yourself.
don't lose eye contact.
Yeah,
Because
make
the
sure you
second you look down to get that rock,
Yeah.
take your eyes off the cougar.
Yeah. I mean, that's bad. The worst thing you can do is turn around and run. Right?
Yeah.
Again, it's a big cat.
It's a big cat. If you have small children, what do you want to do?
Small, if they're really small, pick them up. Because you just became a big two-headed monster, right? They're just cougars. They're not that smart. Your child became safer. You became bigger, right?
So
the
if
biggest
you're-
thing is though, if they're older and you can't pick them up,
Right.
just put yourself between the cougar and the children,
Yeah.
right? And then back up.
Okay. And if you're with a group, sort of huddle to make yourselves
Yeah.
look like this
Closer
4 or
together.
6-headed monster.
I do lots of school talks, and I tell the children that quite often. Get together with your buddy or your friend, and so you're close, and slowly walk away.
Yeah. Good.
So-
Now, bear spray, is that a good thing to carry?
Bear spray works really good. You have to be really close.
Okay.
It comes out in a
How
fog or a
close?
mist, 3 meters.
That's close.
That's close.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got to be close. Air horns also
And
work well.
Also, not downwind. from.
Yeah, that's the other thing with bear spray. You have to be
yourself.
worried because you're only going to get sprayed as you if you spray it into the wind.
Yeah.
So you've only incapacitated yourself.
Yeah. Air horn or a whistle?
Air horns work good. Whistles, if it's deep, you want to watch that whistle because if they're high pitched, you're creating a problem.
It sounds
Right?
like
So
an
air
injured
horns are
deer.
good. You don't got to worry about the wind. It's a deep, loud noise.
Yeah.
Right.
And let's talk about, cougars and bears. A bear is an omnivore, so he'll eat anything.
Yes.
And a cougar is a carnivore, right?
Correct.
So they're mostly feasting on rabbits, deer.
Yeah, cougars' natural prey is deer and raccoons, which is why we tell people don't feed deer and raccoons in your yard or you'll attract a cougar, right? They're opportunistic.
Yeah.
Most of the cougars that we're dealing with as problem cougars are ones that are getting after livestock, usually sheep and goats.
Right. Do you ever relocate cougars?
Extremely rare. We do on
Yeah.
occasion. There was one this summer in Victoria, and again, the cougar had done nothing to warrant its destruction, but it's caught in a situation it can't get out. The cougar that swam to Protection Island last summer, unfortunately, it did get shot by the police one night when it came into town, but we had set live traps. We had fully intended to capture it and remove it because it had done nothing to warrant its removal.
Yeah.
But for public safety, the police had no choice when it swam over onto those docks with all those
Right.
people.
Yeah.
Right?
And speaking of dogs, if you're out walking your dog in the evening or at nighttime, that's
Keep it on a leash.
yeah.
Dogs and cougars, well, dogs and wildlife don't mix. All wildlife view all dogs, be it a Chihuahua or a Great Dane, as wolves, right? So their instinctive reaction is to run. All the pictures of cougars are in trees because you chase them with dogs, right? Cougars don't climb trees to pounce on deer as you walk by or people. They climb trees to get away from dogs. That's why the
And they're
pictures they're all in,
Yeah.
it's a cat and a dog, right?
Right.
I mean, even the cougar hounds that people hunt cougars with are like 50 pounds.
Yeah.
If the cougar turned around, he would win that battle, right? I actually went to a case once where a approximately 150, 200-pound bear was treed by a toy poodle,
Really?
right? Yeah, so it was comical, but I didn't have my camera with me.
Wow.
So, but on top of that, though, those animals are good at math, right? A bear realizes if there's one dog chasing him, he's bigger than the dog. He's
Yeah.
going to turn around, right? Bear will automatically run from a dog, and the dog will automatically chase it. But when the bear does the math and turns around, the dog's coming back to you for help, right? So that's why we say keep them on a leash so you can't cause that problem.
Yeah.
The bear will initially run, but the dog won't get chased back
Yeah.
to you. And cougars, dogs off leash. I mean, cougars can and do kill wolves one-on-one,
Very much. Yeah.
right? So a dog is four-legged and furry, right? So
And so with the deer population here on the island, obviously
Very healthy.
Very healthy. The cougars have a lot to eat, so they're not really looking to attack unless they're provoked or something untoward is happening.
yeah, usually with cougars, it's just opportunity. It's young cougars, and they haven't learned what they are not supposed to attack yet.
Right.
Right. And quite often we find some of the attacks that we investigate are mistaken identity, because they often bite and then let go and leave.
Okay.
It's kind of
They're
like they bite in
practicing.
and that's not a deer.
Yeah.
Right?
Would you ever use bear spray on a cougar?
Absolutely. If you have to
Okay.
use whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you ever get attacked by a cougar, you fight for all you're worth. Start punching and kicking and screaming and
Make yourself as big as you
Yeah,
can.
and if he makes contact, you start fighting because you want to make that cougar think you're not worth it.
Right.
Right.
Now, are there attractants in our yards that are attracting cougars?
The deer and raccoons.
Yeah, and the cats, your kitty cat?
House cats will get taken by cougars
Yeah.
by opportunistic. If the opportunity presents itself, I usually suggest to people keep your house cats indoors because that protects all the little wildlife from your cat and your cat from the big wildlife. Eagles, owls, hawks, raccoons, those can all kill house cats and
Yes,
do.
and do, yeah.
With cougars, it's interesting that they will, but I had cases where the cougar's done nothing wrong, but he's killed a deer near a residential area, and every cat in the neighborhood ran to the smell of the dead deer. Ooh, if the cougar
yeah.
was still there,
Yeah.
it's not going to go well for the cat.
No. And leave your cat and dog food in the house as well. Again,
Yes,
attractants.
big attractant for bears.
Yeah, big
I had a
time.
person one time I had to explain to him that leaving their cat food outside for their dozen outside cats
Yeah.
on their second story balcony didn't mean the bear couldn't get to it because bears could climb,
yeah.
much to their surprise. Right? So-
Crazy. Now, with all the deer on the island, we also have some radio collar deer that people may wonder when they see these deer. Is that a pet deer? What is this on?
No, that's just the biologist doing some studies.
What are we studying?
Just studying how far they travel. We found it quite interesting that the deer in Nanaimo travel less than 500 to 700 meters.
Really? Really?
That's their whole territory. They just have a circle about that big, and that's where they stay. Which aids us in enforcement for some other stuff, where we've put some hidden tracking devices on some deer in case somebody poaches them.
And they have been poached right here in the city.
We have had cases of poaching.
Yeah.
Since we started that project, the poaching of deer in Nanaimo has dropped 98%.
Wow.
So effective.
Good for you guys. Now, I saw one of those radio collared deer, and it looked like the collar was very tight, and I thought,
Yes, the collars on animals have to be very tight because the worst thing that can happen is have it slide up and down because it'll rub their hair off and rub their skin
okay, of course.
and cause a sore.
Yeah.
They look really tight on the bucks.
Yes.
Everybody wonders because the buck's necks swell. Those collars are specifically designed to grow and shrink as the buck's neck does. There's expanding material, or in some cases a new one, where it's some hard plastic items that slide back and forth on each other. They're designed for that.
good to know.
Yeah.
Very humane,
Yes.
those collars are.
Yes.
And when we were talking earlier in the studio, Stuart, we talked about antlers on the deer.
Yes, and apparently you and I and one other gentleman were the only ones that knew they drop their antlers in the winter and grow new ones every spring.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because I thought that was common knowledge, but apparently not.
Yes.
So when you see a deer, and it's only the male deer that have
Yes.
the antlers, with buffalo or bison, both male and female have the horns.
Those are cows.
Okay, well,
Bison are a type of cow. You think caribou.
Caribou.
Caribou, the males
Yeah.
and females both have antlers.
Both
the
have-
males are much bigger,
Yeah.
but they both do have antlers,
Yeah.
yes.
So you see a deer, a buck with
Yes.
5 or 6 points.
Yes.
What does that tell us?
He has good genetics and good feed. That has nothing to do with how old he is. It'll generally be an older deer
Okay.
because they as they grow, until they're done growing their body, they don't spend a lot of energy growing antlers. So that's why you see the younger males will have a single point or 2 little ones on each side. And then as they
Little
get bigger,
nubs they
they get a
start
little
with, yeah.
bigger. Yeah, they're called
Yeah.
spike bucks is what people call them. And then they get a little 2 spikes. And as they get bigger, but the maximum they get is based on their genetics. And there are lots of deer, particularly in Nanaimo, where the male deer never get more than 2 points on
Okay.
each side. And they're
Yeah.
massive, but they're fully mature and adult. It's nothing to do with their old. It's all genetics and feed.
Yeah, I always thought it meant they were 2 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. But it was their father, their grandfather, what
Yeah,
they
and
looked
you can
like.
have one where it's a really harsh, like a drought or something like that in one year where they're having a hard time getting feed, and they'll revert back to being a 2 point, right?
So
They'll be much
sometimes
smaller.
you see the antlers in the forest floor, and that's only because they've been shed.
They shed,
And it's
yeah.
after mating season, right? That
Yeah, it's usually around February, March.
Yeah.
Or if some deer will drop them if they get a little bit unhealthy, they'll drop them earlier. That's why usually like January, February, if we get calls with deer stuff was stuck in their antlers, like netting or something, don't worry about it. The antlers will fall off.
Yeah, now antlers and a hammock. You had an encounter just today.
I did just today.
Yeah.
A young deer got caught in somebody's hammock and then I guess wandered to somebody else's yard out on the road and got stuck on a tree. So we were able
poor
to drug him
deer.
and cut him loose, and he's going to have a hangover in the morning, I would imagine. But
What did that
got a new
process
earring.
look like? You
we tranquilized him. We were able to get close enough. We didn't have to use a tranquilizer gun. We just used a long pole. It's called a jab pole, and just jab sticked him. He went down. We ran up. We cut off all the hammock, and the whole process took 20 minutes.
by the time he was up again and
Up again,
going.
walked away.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's some nice
help.
sedation. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Have you ever had a really close encounter with a deer that didn't go well, like in terms of feeling cornered by one in some situation?
They always
or-
feel that. I try to explain to people. We get cases where we go where deer have been hit by cars, and lots of times people are
Yeah.
petting them, right? And you need to understand
Oh,
something.
dear.
When you show up to an injured deer for whatever reason, the deer thinks you're there to eat it. Deer view people as predators. Yes, eventually some people, I know they do hand feed them, which we really tell people not to. Those would be tame. But generally speaking, most deer view people as a predator, so they think you're there to eat them. So yeah, you do not want to get close
Yeah.
encounters. People have been killed by deer.
Yeah.
Right, those antlers are sharp, their hooves are
And the
sharp.
hooves, yeah.
Right. We had the orphan fawns that we capture. We recapture them by hand in about September. So when they're about, 40, 50 pounds.
Aw.
It took myself and another man my size to hold one down
Really?
without drugs.
Because of the thrashing and the,
They're
they're
powerful,
strong.
powerful animals.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't be grabbing a hold of one anytime soon.
Yeah. Now, there is a fine under the Wildlife Act for feeding deer, is there not?
No.
Oh,
There's a
there
fine.
should be.
There's a city bylaw
Yeah.
for feeding deer. Under the Wildlife Act, the fine is for feeding dangerous wildlife.
Oh,
So coyotes, wolves, cougars, and bears.
did not know that.
Yeah. Again, if you're leaving attractants out that a deer will eat, any bear that shows up will gladly eat it for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing we tell people not to feed deer or raccoons is you usually attract rats,
Right.
which won't make you very popular with your neighbors.
No, it sure won't. No.
Yes.
Now, Stuart, you mentioned that not all bears hibernate here on the island.
No, on Vancouver Island, some bears don't. bears, I mean, generally speaking, bears do hibernate throughout the province.
Right.
And the bears in Vancouver Island, like the females with cubs, almost always do. I've had some females with cubs I've had to deal with in like December, but for the most part, they're usually hibernating. Occasionally, some of the older males and some of the younger males won't.
Yeah.
And the deal there is it's not the temperature, the time of year, it's their calories. When they start burning more calories than they're getting, they'll go hibernate. But on Vancouver Island, we often have lots of sources of food that are readily available year-round.
Yeah.
Right? Winter apples is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right? They don't ripen until the first frost. Well, that might not be till the end of November on Vancouver Island. Right? So generally speaking on Vancouver Island, we're dealing with bears year-round. Yes, the number of calls goes down December, January, February, but we do deal with bears year-round.
Year-round. And springtime, they come out of their dens?
Springtime, you'll just see more of them, right? Yeah. The moms will come out with their cubs usually the end of April, early May.
Yep.
Males will be out a little sooner. Their mating season is actually June, right? And that's when you'll see bears running around all over the place, right? Then the summer, they're just sort of getting their feeling. The berries kick in, and they go right into hyperphagia late July through August, September, October, trying to feed and get fattened up to hibernate, because even if they're not going to hibernate, they're still going to try to fatten up.
Yeah, and they're so beautiful this time of year too. They're
big,
sleek
fat,
coats,
rolly, sleek, shiny coats.
They're beautiful animals, and we want to stay, safe and coexist with them. So you've provided us with a lot of really good tips, and just talk to us briefly. What does it take to be a conservation officer?
To become a conservation officer, it's very similar to the police as far as making sure you have a clean criminal records checks and stuff like that, right? Keep your nose clean, go to school.
Yeah.
But there's some courses you have to take in university. One of the most common ones that most of the officers in BC have taken is actually right here in Nanaimo at VIU. It's called the Resource Management Officer Technology. That's the diploma, and then there's 2 more years if you want to get your degree.
Full degree.
Full degree. The other course, the college that most people go to would be Lethbridge in Alberta. Very similar program. But yeah, so it's 2 to 4 year program. So you're going to earn your stripes. It's a very good training program. They do some practicum ride-along stuff with us or other type agencies. And it qualifies them. I've had people I went to school with that become conservation officers, fisheries officers, border agents, RCMP, right? So there's a lot of
diversity.
Different diversity that comes out
and
of
your
this.
son, I understand, is following in your footsteps.
Yeah, my son, well, he started. We don't know where he's going to land, but he did start the program. So
that's great.
Yeah, we'll see.
Good. Yeah. What's the closest encounter you've had with a cougar?
A cougar?
Yeah.
Well, I had to kick one once.
Wow. A little too close.
Well, no, I had darted it and it went to run away because we weren't going to put it down, and the dogs were chasing it. So we wanted to get it keep the dogs away from the cougar because it couldn't quite climb a tree because it was kind of dopey. And somebody told me that the dogs were on the other side of the pile of firewood, and I reached for it. When it came over, it wasn't a dog.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't want to shoot it, so I just gave it a kick. It was pretty drugged.
Yeah.
It was just still get your heart pumping.
No kidding. That's a little too close for comfort. Well, Stuart, thank you for the work that you're doing out there.
Thank you.
Viewers need to know to call a conservation officer early so you have more options.
I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating when we get calls. Yeah, the bear's been here for 3 weeks getting into my garbage.
Yeah, no.
Well, you should have called me 3 weeks ago. For one, 2, why is your garbage still out?
Exactly. Right. That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing to protect us and the animals, and so we can coexist peacefully and safely together. And stay safe out there, Stuart.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Coast Connections. You stay safe out there in the woods too this fall with the cougars and bears and the bats. We'll see you next time on Coast Connections.